Okay, sorry to be late. I had a camera issue and I needed to get onto my other camera. So let me set our comments. So on Facebook, we can be protected from scammy, spammy people. No scammy, spammy people here. All right, let me turn off my Bluetooth so the folks on Instagram can hear me. And sorry to be late. I went to turn on my camera and my camera on my computer said, no thank you. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but we will figure it out later. So happy Monday. Happy Monday. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful and invigorating weekend and what a beautiful day. It's thundery here. It's thundery. And it's can't wait for summer to be over and put my hair back down. It's so hot here. Hi, Danny. Hi. So really, such a dichotomy, right? My father always used to say to me, he still does, may you live in interesting times. And I think that is such an apt saying. I feel like for my life has always been in that way. I feel like my life has been pretty interesting. But I feel like right now it is a very interesting, we are living in interesting times. And it's not a bad thing. And if you watch the news, you're made to believe that, the world is ending and it's horrible and all of these things, the sky is falling or the buildings are falling. And, there are definitely real challenges out there. I mean, there are. I live in Florida, and the Surfside building collapse has hit so close to home with so many people that we knew, or that we knew people that knew people, and the floods in Germany. And I'm happy to report that my friends in Germany are safe. And there's fires in Oregon, and there is stuff. Here's the thing, and I don't want to belittle any stuff. I don't want to ever belittle anybody's stuff, because, as an environmentalist and somebody who's always worrying about the planet and humanity, I cringe and I weep and I just, oh God, what we are doing to our planet, because we don't have another one. At the same time, there's the higher understanding that there's always been something. So while we're dealing with this crisis or that crisis or the other crisis that's happening right now, there's always been something. We just didn't always know about it. We didn't always have phones. We didn't always have camera phones. We didn't always have social media. We didn't have a 24-hour news cycle. We didn't have all these things. And so people are now more stressed out and more on edge because they're constantly bombarded with all the things that are wrong, because the news does not report on all the things that are right, because who wants to hear about that? I do. But I want to remind you that there are so many more things that are right than that are being reported on. And in this country, in the United States, gun violence, COVID virus, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, buildings collapsing, alleged voter fraud. Pick something. There is something that we can get ourselves all upset about. And I am guilty. I am just as guilty. There are days when I watch the news and I go over to my personal Facebook page and I'm like, because I think it's important for us to be involved and to be aware, and it's important for us to stand up for what's right and to stand up for what is important to help our humanity and our society move forward. And that is remembering that we are souls having a human experience. This is a body that my soul is inhabiting for the period of time that it chooses to be here as the human being known as Sherry. And when I am done and I have learned all the lessons that I can learn as this human being, and I have experienced all the things that I have wanted to experience and I have waited to experience and that I came here to experience, because we come here with a laundry list. We come here with a grocery list that says, I want to experience this, 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 and this. And when we have experienced those things and when we have gone as far as we can go, sometimes we come into this life and we say, I can't achieve my objectives here. I can't, complete my mission. I need to try again. Let me step out and let me step back in. And that's where we feel like we see people who leave us so quickly that we're like, wait, where did they go? Sudden illness or senseless, violence or car crashes or building collapses. All of that is part of it. And so while my human is, can so easily be caught up in the turmoil of what are we doing to this planet? What are we doing to each other? Why is it so hard for us to get it together and say, yes, you have the right to own a gun, but we need common sense gun laws. We need gun laws that are going to help protect citizens at large so that we are not the most violent nation on the planet. Yes, we're having a global pandemic, but we need vaccination and we need people to trust and to get on board and say, this is what we need to do for the greater good. And the idea of the greater good has so much possibility to make the world a better place. And yet it is also fraught with, things from our history that have been used for harm and for exile and for extermination. And so we have to be careful. And it's the human in me that just goes, ah, right? But my soul, my mind, because we have the human brain and then we have the soul mind, which is a totally different thing. In the mind, it says humanity is evolving. Humanity is on a path. Humanity right now is in its late teens, early 20s. And it is being a whole lot about me, and a whole lot about rebelliousness and nonconformity, and humanity is evolving, and humanity will continue to grow. And hopefully, if not in my lifetime, in the lifetime of my children, humanity will evolve to a place where there can be peace, and there can be tolerance, and there can be compassion. Because that's really what we need more of, is tolerance and compassion. We don't have to be the same, but we don't have to beat each other up for not being the same. You are doing your thing and that works for you, God bless. And I'm doing my thing and it works for me, fantastic. You don't have to conform to my way. As long as your way is not hurting anyone and your way is not telling anyone else they're wrong and that they have to conform to that way, we can all respect each other and live in peace. I hope that we hunt hat soon. I'm thinking, I hope that we have that soon. I hope, yes, that. Me too. So here's the thing. And some of you who, whether you're watching this now or you're watching this later, you will have heard me talk about how humanity is evolving through the chakras. And so through the ages of, even just back to the evolution of humanity millions of years ago. Because if you're somebody who thinks that the world is 5,000 years old, we need to have a different conversation. However, humanity has evolved over millions of years, and even going back to those earliest forms of man, Neanderthals and cavemen and all of those folks, they were functioning through the root chakra, the base chakra of I need safety and security, I need a place to live, I need to be safe from dinosaurs, I need food to eat, I need to be able to hunt the dinosaurs and figure out which trees and grasses and weeds and things I can eat without, getting poisoned. And I need, fire to be able to stay warm in the winter. So these were all root chakra issues. And humanity has been in the root chakra for millennia. It wasn't until the advent of the Industrial Revolution where we came into building machinery and buildings and roads and cars and some kind of automation that we got into our sacral chakra, where we started to look at what are our relationships and how do we relate to each other and how do we work together how do we not work together, and we get into the world wars, the period of world wars in our world history. Okay, and there's always been war, and there's always been strife, which is unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. But you're always going to have people that feel like if I give you some, that means I have less. And that's not really how it goes because there really is enough for everyone. And so we move through society, we move through humanity's continued evolution, and because our sacral chakra is all about those interpersonal relationships, and we move into the time of the solar plexus chakra, which is the all about myself and how I view me and how I view me in relation to you. And then we are getting into now into the 50s and the 60s and the 70s of the 1900s, previous century, which is weird to say previous century, but now we're getting into how does humanity define, how do we define ourselves, how do we see ourselves. And so in the 50s we had a lot of conformity, in the 60s we started to see a lot of individuation, in the 70s, and that carried us all the way into the 80s and 90s, into the preppies and the punk rock and the music and Nirvana and all of that, you know, as we have been in those hi Ellen, happy Monday, that we have been in that solar plexus chakra for a long time. And so it's not, you know, here and now we're here. It's very, the lines blur. And so also into the 60s and the 70s, really in the 70s, not so much the 60s, but in the 70s, we started to get into the love, the heart chakra, where there was the hippies and the flower children with, you know, free love and love yourself and love others. And that's where so much starts. And we have, into that into the 80s, which becomes, you know, love of money and love of self. It really becomes about, you know, me, what can I get, what can I do, and how much can I have for myself, and all about material gain. And then we started to get into the throat chakra, and that's where we have been for a while, is the throat chakra. We're seeing that so, hi Beth, we're seeing that so visibly right now with the throat chakra, where we have Black Lives Matter, and we have, you know, the March for Our Lives, you know, after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting, and we have the Me Too movement and Time's Up, and all of these things are coming from the throat chakra, where marginalized members of society, whether it was people of color or indigenous people or women or young people, people that have been marginalized, people who have had, who have been told to sit quiet, and that their voices didn't matter. We really are in the time of the throat chakra. And ooh, it is a bumpy ride. It is tumultuous because people have been freed by the previous president to say whatever, no filter, whether it was true or a bold-faced lie, or it was appropriate or not appropriate. That the throat chakra, that voice has just been freed. We came out of a place of, you know, there were certain things you just didn't say, because you want to be polite and respectful. You could think what you want, but to, you know, say this or that would be, you know, very disrespectful. And we didn't do that out loud. And so the previous administration in this country threw the doors off on that and said, you say whatever you want, doesn't matter what's true, and don't worry about the consequences, because he literally did not care. And that creates a whole nother conversation around free speech and hate speech, but it threw open the doors for a whole section of society that now was feeling that they were marginalized by being, you know, white people, that they were being overrun, because we know that the Caucasian folks in this country are not the majority anymore, or they certainly won't be soon. And so now they feel marginalized. And so it throws open the doors for their voices to be freed, except for the fact that their voices have always been free. They just were being polite. And so we've lost that politeness. Now, I'm a firm believer in we will get back to that, because right now, we were sort of, before all of this, we were in the be polite, politically correct, don't say that, don't be rude, in the childhood of humanity, where we weren't saying those things because we were the parents. You know, when your parents say, oh, we don't say that, be don't be polite. Don't ask a person's age. Don't, whatever. Like all of those social norms that we had in polite society. But now that the throat chakra has been freed, you have the positive, which is Black Lives Matter and the marching in the streets and gay pride and women's rights and the women's march and all of these incredible, amazing things, freeing the voice. But the universe loves balance, and there will always be two sides to a coin. The universe will always say, well, wait a minute, if we're going to free the voice over here, then we're going to free the voice over here too. And so, for like it or not, now you have these people who may be saying things that we don't particularly like, but their voices have been freed as well. And so while that is very frustrating and can be very upsetting, um, it's also, it's healing. It will be healing. It's not healing yet, but it will be healing, because we've seen this cycle before. When these voices of radicalism were freed, people came out and said, this isn't what we want. This is not how we're going to live. This is not how we define our society. And laws were changed and society changed, and what people were willing to accept changed. And people started to turn their back on hate and racism and injustice. Not injustice, but they turned their back on on being blind to injustice, and they started to stand up to create this kind of society that we wanted. And that's where people like John Lewis comes in, and I know the anniversary of his passing is coming up really soon. But in that, we made strides forward to create the kind of humanity that we want to live in. And then now we have to repeat that cycle. And you've heard me talk about the slinky. We've talked about this because I'm not trying to be all political. Okay, I'm not trying to get all political, but I am trying to talk about where are we going as the evolution of society, because people will talk to me and they'll say, why does it feel like I keep repeating the same lessons over and over again? Why am I repeating the same? Why do I find myself in the same situation over and over and over again? And this is why. And so it's the same thing for society, for humanity. It's not just me or you, it's all of us. And so here we had, where in the civil rights movement, the start of the civil rights movement in this country, we had all those lessons were learned, and people learned, and they grew and they made laws, and they stood for against injustice and the right to vote and all of those things. And then we could get complacent and we forget, and we have to come around again to learn that lesson again, except that we're not down here anymore trying to scramble out of the dirt. We're now up here saying, no, no, no. We see where we have come from, and we have seen all that we have learned, and we will not go back. So no matter what happens, there is still progress that has been made in our society, in the evolution of humanity. And so we will continue. And so while it seems like, because I've been hearing a lot of people on the news talking about we will not go back, and we've learned nothing from history, and I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true. I think we're learning a lot from history, and I think that there are things that happened a long time ago that we forget, and we go around and we go around and we go around. We get complacent. We're like, oh, we have to remember that, and we have to learn to do this better this time. But it's only from cataclysmic events or major events that we learn. There's a poem that I love that I can't remember right now at all, but it says, it's in the valleys we grow. And so we as a society had been in a pretty big valley, and now we're growing. Now, not everything, not everybody is choosing to climb the mountain. I just finished reading Cheryl Strayed's book Wild, which, if you haven't read it, I thought it was really marvelous. I have no real desire to see the movie, even though I know Reese Witherspoon won an Oscar for her performance as Cheryl Strayed. But the book was so compelling because she's literally hiking some of the highest mountains in our country in the Pacific Northwest, and she hikes. It's a story of a woman in her 20s who hikes the Pacific Coast Trail, It is along the highest peaks of the mountains in the Pacific. She went from Mexico to Oregon. And I mean, what a journey. She hiked like 1,100 miles. I can't. But she talks about the peaks, climbing up and then climbing down and climbing up. And there are people who will get to the mountaintop and think that that's all there is, and they will grow no further. There are people who will come down the mountain and see the next incline and say, that is too hard, and I don't want to do that, and they will bail out or they will choose to stay in the valley. Okay, so not everyone will choose to evolve, will choose to move from the place of the throat chakra, will choose to learn from the things that we have experienced before. There are plenty of people who will say, I'm not learning from that. I don't even want to like admit that that actually happened. We have people who deny the Holocaust, who think that people of color are still second class citizens. Citizens. Oh, can't say that today. There are people who think that women are still second class citizens. So there are people, there will always be people who will refuse to learn, who will refuse to grow. But what happens is that society will pass them by. Human evolution will pass them by. Because what happens after we free our voice is we open the eye. We open the third eye. And we are already seeing that, because remember, it's not like steps or doors where you finish in this room and you close the door and now you're going to move to this room and open the door. It's a blending, okay? It's a blending. And so while we're still here, because we are still here in the voice chakra and the throat chakra, while we're still here in this period of our evolution, we are starting to see the movement towards the third eye, and up into the beginnings of enlightenment. And I know this because there are so many places and people that are talking about metaphysics and astrology and crystals and plant-based diet. I listened to an interview with the wife of James Cameron, and they were talking about their movement called OMD, one meal a day. And they were talking about if we each committed to having one plant-based meal a day, like nothing that came from an animal. If we each did that one meal a day, that we would save, like we could literally save the earth, because commercial animal raising and processing and all of that is one of the most expensive and destructive things to our planet. Now, I'm not saying you need to be a vegan, because I'm certainly not a vegan, but I do eat a lot of vegetables. I love my vegetable garden, and I love, all of that. And there's definitely room for that. But I love this idea that by just eating more vegetables and less animal products, whether that's eggs or milk or cheese, we could really change the face of the earth, because we would be reducing those industries and reducing the need in those industries, reducing our dependence. We don't have to eliminate farming and chickens and cows and any of those things, but reducing. And what a difference that could make for the earth. And I thought that was just an incredible thing to think about. And don't get me wrong, I love a good steak. I'm sorry, I'm just never going to be a vegetarian. But I do, the idea of supplementing or shifting to one plant-based meal a day, I mean, that's easy. I have a salad for lunch. Just don't put chicken on it. Done. Okay, it's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And the Beyond Burgers and the black beans, and there's so many options that we didn't have before. And so there are so many people that are talking about living their lives in a different way, not radical changes. We're not talking about like, oh, I am shunning everything from my past and I am just going to be this whole brand new person. We're not talking about radical change, but what we are talking about is seeing so many people, so many more people talking about the heightened awareness of understanding the importance of meditation, of understanding the importance of being out in nature and protecting nature. For the first time in this country's history, we have a woman of indigenous background as the Secretary of the Interior. That is incredible. The Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, is the first openly gay person to serve at a cabinet level position. That's incredible. I mean, we are making such strides, but nobody talks about them. Or let me rephrase that: the news media is not talking about. And so I want to um, remind you that the news media has an agenda, and I'm not going to get into a whole like bias of the news or whatever, but it's so important that we understand that that's not the whole story. And so while we are still working our shit out in the throat chakra, we are seeing so much coming in of the third eye. And with that comes, and I've talked about this for a while, with the rising of the light and more people opening up to the higher chakras, we see those people who cling to the status quo, that are going to cling to power, cling to ego, cling to greed. We see this in the Mitch McConnells and the Trumps. I mean, look, if you follow me, you know I'm a Democrat. You know I'm blue. I'm liberal. If you follow me, you know. And I don't, try not to bring politics in, but this is where we're going today. Um, to see somebody like Mitch McConnell who completely refuses to even come to the table for anything, that is somebody who is clinging to the status quo, who is clinging to power over anything else. Whether it's good or it's bad, it doesn't matter, because power and maintaining it is the only thing on his agenda. And I'm not getting into whether he's right or wrong, I'm just using him as an example. Looking at the advancement of the Taliban in Afghanistan is very concerning, because all the gains that we have fought for this war that is as old as my children basically go out the window the minute we left town. And they said, great, you're all done now. We're going to take it right back to where it was 20 years ago. And that's very frustrating and very sad. But those are people who are clinging to the status quo. They are clinging to what they believe to be right, with no interest or ability to move into the highers. Because when the ground underneath your feet starts to shake with the vibrational attunement of change and growth and the awakening of humanity, we are literally raising the vibration. And you've heard me talk before about raising our vibration so that we are not staying in a place of low vibration of anger and jealousy and rage and hate and mad and all of the guilt. All of those things are low vibration. That we are operating in a higher vibration by being in a place of love. When we hold love in our heart and compassion and tolerance and support for other, and we are believing and understanding that we are all one humanity, that is a high vibration. And when we vibrate at that high vibration, the people who are not, they're feeling like this. They feel the slinky is jiggling and they're like, ooh, the earth is shaking. What is going on? And they will cling more tightly to the things that they know for sure. My twin flame used to say to me all the time, well, one thing I know for sure, one thing I know for sure, one thing I know for sure. And it cracked me up because he was, I thought, well, he knows a lot of things for sure. And also because he was a scientist. And so, when you are in science, is anything for sure? So it always gave me a giggle when he would say that. But the people who are fearing and clinging to the status quo, they are holding on to what they know for sure. And those of us who are ready to grow and evolve and who are raising the vibration are the ones stepping out to say, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm being called to go. This is where my soul is feeling I need to go. I don't know all the details. I don't know exactly how. Mike Julie talks about the cursed house. Don't worry about the cursed house. Let the universe do its job. The universe will handle that part for you. The universe will handle the how. And I love that. But that can be scary. I'm going to go from here to there, but I don't know how. I just trust that when I take that next step, the next place will be provided for me. There's another quote, and I don't plan these quotes because otherwise I would look them up before I say them. But there's another quote, and I think it's actually on my website. It says, when you come to the edge of all that you know for sure, the edge of the light, and you step off into the darkness, one of two things is guaranteed. One is that you will step onto something solid, or two, you will be taught how to fly. I know I just completely butchered that quote. I do. I know that. But you have the understanding. You get the gist. And that is really the truth. And when you are willing to step out in faith, and when you are willing to trust in the universe, then you will step on something solid, or you will be taught how to fly. And the how is not up to us because we have trusted into the universe. And those people who can't see beyond, they're the ones holding on to power. They're the ones holding on to greed and avarice and what they know to be what they know for sure. And they are so afraid to step out into something that is unknown. If we agree to this and if we make this change, what will happen? We don't know. So therefore we can't do it. We will stay here where it is safe. Okay, we will only step into what we know for sure. And that is a, a place of fear. That is living in a low vibration. And so we're going to continue to see turmoil and unrest in countries around the world and in our own country as we continue to grapple with what I know for sure. Because if you're only willing to step forward when you know for sure what's going to happen next, you're not going to be very willing to take step forward. Okay. If I only stepped forward and went out of my house, if I knew for sure that I was going to make it to the grocery store and back in the amount of time on budget with no car accidents, safely, whatever, I'd never leave my house. My kids are in their 20s. They both work a job that they really like, and it often calls for them to work late into the night. And so sometimes at night, my sons will come home at 2 or 3 in the morning. As a mother, this gives me a little bit of stress, but we've worked out some systems so that I know that they're home safe without having to wait up till 3 in the morning. And at the same time, I have to trust the universe that they're going to drive safely and they're going to, use good sense and they're going to get safely to their job. They're going to do their job to the best of their ability. They're going to come home safely. And they do. And if I had to think of but what if this happened? And what if that could happen? And this could happen? And this could happen? I would never let them leave the house. No mother would. And so at a certain point, we have to trust into the universe and we have to trust into not knowing how everything is going to go, or we would never leave our houses. And so we have this ability, but not everybody is willing to be more, to take that to the next step. And so as long as humanity is not willing to, to see, and not willing to step forward until they can see next, we won't see the movement and the progress that we want to see as humanity is evolving. However, while there are those, and there will always be those who want to live here and want to live in the low vibration, there are more people waking up every single day saying, this is stupid and this is ridiculous. I can't know everything. I have to trust the universe. I have to get out of my house. I have to go and live my life. And so I'm going to have faith and I'm going to step out and I'm going to trust. And that's raising the vibration. And when we can move more people in that direction, more people become aware and we start to move into this chakra and this chakra. And so I think as we go forward over the next, the course of this decade, we're going to see more and more people lining up on the side of the light. And we will see less people lining up on the side of fear and low vibrational energy. They will always be there and they will always be loud. That doesn't mean that they will be the majority. And that, I think, is the thing to remember. Because the people who are unhappiest are always the loudest, right? And we know that saying about the squeaky wheel, right? So the people who are unhappy are always going to be the loudest. The people who are going to tell you what's wrong and who's to blame for it and what you need to fear, those will always be loud voices, even if there is only one left. That person will still be yelling at the top of their lungs. But more and more people are opening their eyes to say, this is not the way. And I'm going to be over here with the light because I believe in the power of the universe. And I believe there's something else that's out there. I believe there's something more. And I want to be part of it. And I want to be connected with it. And we are seeing books and spiritual retreats and yoga classes and meditation retreats all just exploding as people are starting to come out of their COVID, pandemic and their quarantines and their behind closed doors. And it is wonderful to see. And so I want to remind you, while the people who will restrict and who are holding on to the status quo They're louder. They will always be louder. That doesn't mean that they are more powerful, and it doesn't mean that they um, are the majority, because I promise you, they're not. So let's look at some cards. Gosh, I wonder what's going on that I felt so compelled to share all that with you. As we're coming into, I know we passed the first quarter of the moon, so we're going to be coming into the full moon soon. All right, so which of our, oh, how fun. So which of our, in the Oracle of the Seven Energies, which of our cards will we start with today? Where are my glasses? Oh. And this is Birds of a Feather. Birds of a Feather. How fun is that? Birds of a Feather, because we're talking about the people like staying together. Oh, what did I just do? Good gracious. I need a haircut. Birds of a Feather. And so isn't this so wonderful? Because this is, there's a little colored diamond around the number of the card, and that tells me which chakra it's connected to. So guess what? It's blue. Blue is the throat chakra. Of course it is. So this is about staying together and speaking your truth, and being not being afraid to share who you are with those around you. So we're not hiding in our group. We're sharing who we are, and we're sharing our voice. Look, it's birds. They're chirping. They're chirping. They're sharing their song. We're sharing our truth. We're sharing our voice with those around us. We're spreading the word so that others can be empowered and lifted by what we have to say, and by what we share when we share our truth through our throat chakra and through using our words. We use words, not weapons. We use words. We come from a place of love and compassion. All right. Let's see which goddess from the Goddess Power Oracle is with us today. That's going to be working with us. And that is going to be Isis. Oh, I love this. Isis, she is the goddess of rebirth. Rebirth. I love that. How appropriate is that? All right, she's 24. You know, I like to read the things here because I want to really get the intention of the goddess. So this is the process of soul retrieval and resurrection and rebirth is the theme of recurrent through stories of the Egyptian goddess Isis, and one that she invites you to address. This is a powerful moment to see some of what you thought you'd lost go through a process of regeneration to live again. Like magic, the pieces of you that were considered lost in old wounds and stories that are ready to be reclaimed in a healthier, more mature version. Where you were hopeless, now there is hope. And where you were lost, where you lost faith, you now have the capacity for even more. So this is fantastic because she's talking completely about the slinky. She's talking about the slinky. She's talking about revisiting things and at another level. The lessons that we learned down here, relearning them now from another perspective. This is what she's talking about, rebirth and regeneration, and moving through those processes and moving through those timelines again to learn the lesson at a higher level. That's what she's talking about. That is so fantastic. I love that. Cards are so amazing because they are always just right on whatever it is that we are talking about. They, no matter how much I shuffle, the right ones come to the top. I think that is so amazing. I am awed by the universe every day. Every day. All right. So we're going to finish up with 3 cards from Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Light Oracle card deck, which I love. I know she's got a new book out. Work Your Light Oracle card deck. It's my favorite deck. I love this deck. And, oh, a jumper. Okay, so we're going to start with Star Mother. How can you mother yourself? And I think that this goes back to one of the first things we were talking about earlier, which is how humanity, we were taught to as we've evolved as humanity, we were really much in the, be polite, treat people with respect, like act like a good child. And we were sort of being mothered by, our ancestors to act in a certain way. And now, and this is really important for us to mother ourselves, not just to nurture ourselves and practice self-care and self-love, which is always, but at the same time to we are now the parent. We now have to decide, are we going to stay in that place of being small and being polite and playing, safe, or are we going to allow ourselves to step out and help to reshape society and free our throat chakras and help more people to move into the third eye? And so at the second card, this is the jumper card. This is awakening. This is awakening. It says energetic upgrades, a new way of being. Hello, hello, a new way of being, because this is really exactly where we are coming from a place we say, well, we have lived complacent for a long time, and now we've had all this shakeup over the last few years. And so how do we want to go forward? Who do we want to be? That we are really now being called to revisit the things and the lessons of our past and see them in a new way. And at the same time, we're the parent now. We're the ones who are calling the shots now. We are no longer living in society where it's like, okay, be quiet and be respectful, and we don't say those things. We have freed the voice where we speak the truth. We don't have to speak it meanly, but we speak the truth and we stand up for what is right, and we do not let others trample on us when we are awakening to something higher. And so many more people every single day are awakening. I can't tell you how many people call me and want to book appointments with me that have never sat with a psychic, but they just, something inside them said it was time. It was, they've always had curious, they were always afraid, or they, now that this is time. I'm like, fantastic. So every time I talk to these people, I know that is not just one person that's awakening, but it's that one person in a group of people that are having this conversation that is all awakening. So I'm telling you, people are moving in that direction. And then the last card for today is break the chain. Ancestral patterns, healing, and rewriting the future. Are you kidding? You cannot make this stuff up. I mean, you hear me shuffle these cards, right? I mean, I'm shuffling in there 3 times every time with the cards, but breaking the chain of what we did in the past is not locking us into what we're going to do in the future. Thinking for ourselves, moving up the chain, moving up the evolution of humanity to learn the lessons, to learn from our past so that we can make a better choice when we get to this lesson again. And that is so much of who we are and where we are and what is going on as humanity is moving through this throat chakra for probably another, I want to say 10 to 20 years. So we're going to be moving through the throat chakra, but we are moving up. It's like, if we're here, or let me see, it's got to be bigger. So if we moved from the heart chakra into the throat chakra, right, and now we're into the throat chakra and we're starting to be into the third eye. So we're in here, right? But it's going to, people move slow. Humanity takes time. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years because they needed to wait for that generation of stubborn and stiff-necked people to die off. And that's kind of where we are. So it's going to take time. But I keep the faith because I can see that even though the news is ugly, because the news is designed to be ugly, that we are moving in a good direction. There used to be like the last, 30 seconds, 60 seconds on the news broadcast, they would put a happy story on. They don't seem to do that anymore. So we have to find our own happy stories. So I challenge you and invite you to share your happy stories here. And let's, remember and let's remind each other that the news is not all bad, that everything is not falling apart. Lots of things are falling into place. I want to say thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me today. It is such an honor to me that you take time out of your busy days to spend some time with me. I want to remind you that our Wednesday meditation is now on Thursday. And so I will not see you this Wednesday, but I will see you at 7 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday. And so that will be our meditation place from here on for a while on Thursdays. And I hope you can join us. I look forward to seeing you there. Have a blessed week, a blessed day, and know how much you are so truly loved.